So welcome to the first in a series of Dynamic Business Services podcasts. We look behind the scenes of recent projects that we've delivered and we deconstruct the case studies. We're meeting real people who've been involved in the project development, from subject matter experts to project managers from the Dynamic team. In this first episode, I'm delighted to talk about infection prevention and control, and hosted by me, Nick Bramley, with special guests Sue Jones. Sue's the lead nurse for post-registration education and development, IPC TV, with the team at Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
Next to Sue, we have Dr. Andrea Denton, and Andrea is a former IPC lead nurse for professional development at NHS in the Northwest. Welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, we've got Alison Hadfield. Alison's an e-learning project manager for the NHS at Dynamic Business Services, one of the UK's leading digital learning providers. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to the podcast, ladies. We've got a fantastic array of questions to really dig deep into, and it's great to see that you're all here to explore how your ambition for and creation of a brand new IPC Development Pathways programme has become something of a game changer and a bit of reality. So if we can crack on first, I'm going to aim a question at Sue or Andrea to decide who wants to answer. You've recently created this unique infection prevention and control development pathways programme, and it's a collaboration between Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust and the NHS Northwest. So we're going to explore that in a bit more detail throughout the podcast and look at it in a bit more detail. But what was the driver for this in the first instance?
So I think the main driver for it was the advent of the pandemic that hit in 2019-20. Obviously that was put lots of pressure on infection prevention and control teams across the country. And it threw a bit of a curveball because it meant that we had teams in place who had members of staff who might have been thrown into infection control without necessarily having the knowledge and skills and behaviours that they needed to undertake that role. And also people even in senior roles who had come from other areas with transferable skills, but not necessarily in infection control. So sort of the driver behind it was to develop a pathway to upskill individuals in infection prevention and control, and then through across teams, around healthcare. So that was the main driver.
Excellent. Well, it was front and centre of all our lives, wasn't it? From certainly outside of the care sector in NHS, March onwards, but you were probably thrown into that a little bit earlier, knowing it was coming, weren't you? Very
much so, yeah. And I think the other thing for it as well is there are quite a lot of members of infection control teams who've known nothing but COVID. So I think the other thing that the pathway will do will be to introduce them to what the new normal infection control is outside of COVID, which a lot of people, certainly in our team, we've got quite a high percentage of the team members who've never known anything outside COVID. So it'll be a good starting block for them to get back onto infection control.
Excellent. Okay. Andrea, you seem to have had very clear objectives for this development pathway programme from the outset. What were you looking to achieve by its creation in the first instance?
I think, as Sue said, we wanted something quite fluid and flexible that would meet kind of lots of needs for lots of individuals. We didn't want to be too prescriptive. We're conscious that there are a lot of courses out there, some of them very academic, some other e-learning kind of packages out there. But I think for us, we wanted to focus on behaviour change. We wanted to kind of have some threads throughout around communication, leadership and learning and getting that engagement with people. And when we kind of talked about behaviour change, it wasn't just about the people that were going to undertake the actual course or the pathway. It was actually the people that they would be then going out to try and get their behaviours changed as well. So that was very much a driving point as well, that we wanted it to be quite fluid. We've used a lot of scenarios and examples, and we've tried not to make it acute focused. We've tried to incorporate the social care sector, mental health, so it's kind of relevant to non-NHS as well as NHS. So we've tried to be, quite broad in kind of who we've aimed it for as well.
I was going to ask you who it's aimed at, but that seems to be a really good broad brush, and there's a different pathway, depends on where you are and what your perceived or experience level is before you start the programme, yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was important to you in terms of choosing the right partner? Obviously, Dynamic Business Services have been instrumental in designing and developing the content. What were you looking for in a partner when it came to choosing your digital e-learning provider?
So I think we were looking for somebody who would, I suppose, understand what we'd written and be able to do the best with that work and bring it to life, as we've said a few times, haven't we, to make it the fantastic product that it is. And at Manchester Foundation Trust, I'd seen some of Dynamic's work through our e-learning, so we got introduced to that and we were shown some examples of what they could do, and it looked like it would be a perfect fit. And also Alison, who's been instrumental in supporting us with it, also we got on really well with Alison, so it just worked extremely well, didn't it, for our needs.
Excellent, okay. Well, Alison, let's explore your side of things. It's a very important piece of work for the Trust, and I know that at Dynamic Business Services you've probably got the widest experience in the UK of working with NHS trusts on digital and e-learning solutions, but it must still rank as a really high profile piece of work that you've worked on for this one. What was important to you in starting the process of creating this particularly important piece of content for engaging interactive learning?
Yeah, well, a few questions there. Certainly it has been the highest ranked sort of piece of work that I've worked on recently, and also one of the biggest projects that I've worked on in recent years. I think what was really important to me was to ensure that we established and cultivated a really good working partnership with our subject matter experts, which we've already alluded to. So it was really great to be able to work with Sue and Andrea, who, as with the subject matter expertise that they had, were able to explain a lot of the content, and obviously as far as the scripting was concerned, we were heavily reliant on them when we were looking at sort of intermediate and advanced type content. So as far as the pathways are concerned, there are three of them. There's a foundation level, an intermediate and advanced level. So we were able to certainly understand the content at the foundation level, but when we started to look at the more in-depth content, then we had to rely on the expertise of these guys in order to provide us with that. And then moving forward, we spent an awful lot of time, didn't we, talking about how that information could be brought to life. So that was crucial, and it evolved really over quite a period of time, really.
It strikes me that you need a really good brief in the outset so you know what you're expected to do, and then it's almost like a moving piece of work, isn't it, as it goes through the project. So it's important that communication's key to that, but I think it's also important, as you suggested there, that the knowledge is transferred to your team at Dynamic Business Services, and they've got the ability to interpret that and create something engaging and pardon the pun, really, dynamic content for the learner.
Yeah, it was crucial, really, and because of the scale of the project, Sue and Andrea were involved with so many people within the team. It felt like a real sort of collaboration where Sue and Andrea weren't just working with myself, but working with other project managers, working with the film crew, working with developers and designers as well, to ensure that we had a really top product to be able to deliver.
Well, it certainly delivered the top product. It's fantastic, and the finished article is absolutely excellent to see. But I'm going to go back to Sue or Andrea, really, in the programme itself. You alluded to the fact that there are three clear and distinct pathways available at different levels. So what was the thinking behind that at the outset, and how would someone decide which pathway is right for them if they're looking at this particular content?
I think the thinking about having the three levels was that we very much wanted the first level to be aimed at all staff. I mean, we've talked about the pandemic and how the teams had different structures and maybe different kind of mix of skills and expertise, but also across the health and social care sector and possibly beyond, I suppose, as well. It's important that people have that understanding around some of the fundamentals around infection prevention and control, because it is fundamental to kind of lots of things that we do. And we were very much thinking that we wanted people from all kind of different aspects of the health and care sector, so porters, domestic staff, clinical staff, to be able to kind of access those, say for example the foundation. I think the other two levels we started to think again a little bit fluidly. We didn't want to say, right, well the intermediate's for this person and the advanced is for this, because And I used to use myself as a bit of an example. I came into IPC with quite a lot of number of years of nursing experience, but not very much IPC experience. So I would have found all 3 levels very useful because some of the knowledge I didn't have. I had some transferable skills because I'd also been a teacher as well. You know, I'd been a nurse lecturer. So I think it was getting people to look at where they're at. And what we've done is we've developed a capability framework that works alongside the pathways at the similar levels, foundation, intermediate and advanced. Right. And it's all about knowledge, skills and behaviour, which we talked about. You know, both of us have always been very keen on that behaviour element. And you can look at that and have a look at where you think you're at alongside a manager or a colleague or a mentor who can actually help you explore at which stage you think you're at.
Okay. Alison, can I just touch on different learning styles and creating content that is engaging for different types of people, because that in itself is a challenge, I guess. This particular set of modules is really diverse, isn't it, in how it delivers the learning. So it appears as though the expert guidance is backed up by practical skills and behavioural development. What kind of content have you designed and developed into the programme?
Well, throughout all of the programmes, there's an awful lot of media-rich content. So we did make a conscious effort at the foundation level to make a lot of the units of learning or the modules a lot more interactive. We also included a lot of knowledge checks and quizzes. The foundation levels, the content itself lent itself very well for us to be able to create motion graphic videos, so some nice sort of animations with presenter-led videos. So very, very sort of engaging, quite interactive. We carried this over at the sort of intermediate and advanced level, but because the subject matter is a lot more in-depth, we did really think long and hard about a different approach really in terms of the media that we were using. So although we did use a lot of video, a lot of the video tended to be presenter style where we were interviewing subject matter experts or presenters were explaining a particular feature. Something that particularly springs to mind is one of the units that we worked on, which was around quite a dry subject, I would say, around accountability and responsibility. We spoke at great length really in terms of how we could present that, and the upshot of that was to create a really sort of detailed case study, which we ended up filming in a mock courtroom in Leeds, where we obviously were very much reliant on Sue and Andrea, sort of behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes as well, to actually pull to script and present a coroner's inquest, which was related to an infection prevention control incident.
I mean, that brings everything to life, doesn't it? When people are engaged with content, they want to do more, they want to really get involved in it, and maybe they want to go through the whole thing from foundation throughout. So, you know, that's a great, I mean, it does look fantastic, it does work really well, and we touched on the fact that, you know, launching it is a really proud moment, isn't it, for the trust and for yourselves, because it's got your name stamped all over it, hasn't it?
It's exciting, a little bit, you know, not quite sure how nobody's seen the intermediate and advanced yet, have they? So yeah, but no, it is exciting, and it's exciting to see where it might go, because this is the beginning of wherever it's going to take it, you know, wherever it will end up going. So
excellent. Okay. Well, the level 3 pathway, there's also a graduating academic credit, isn't there, on that one, which in itself is impressive. Could you tell us a bit more about how it's linked to the credits that you get for university or academic recognition?
We were very conscious with the advanced that if people are, you know, there's some really excellent activities, it really gets them thinking, reflecting, looking at, you know, what they're doing in their own particular area, especially the advanced, when they might be leading a team and might be thinking about how can we recruit, how do we kind of make sure, you know, thinking about the pandemic and how do we prevent burnout, how do we look at managing stress. So we discussed it with some universities to see could we actually, for people who want to, so it's optional, they can actually get some academic credits at master's level, which is part of actually undertaking those 3 units at advanced level, but also they will have an extra bit of work to do, an assignment. So it might be, you know, a poster presentation, it could be doing a critical incident. The portfolio will also, you know, form part of that evidence for them to get the credits. But we felt that it was really worthwhile to try and give people that opportunity to actually obtain some academic credits at a level that then they can put towards something else.
I know you've only launched the initial programme. You said that you haven't got any feedback yet on the advanced and the third level yet. What's the feedback been to the start of the programme? You've obviously soft launched it internally and you've launched it elsewhere. What's the initial reaction been?
Very good, very good. People like the content, they like the way it flows, they like the way it looks, they like the photographs and pictures they've used. They mentioned that, didn't they, to say it was very diverse, which obviously in current sort of situation it's good that it's diverse and it sort of fits everybody. And people have said that the way they work through it and the links and all the activities make them look at their own communication and that of teams around them, and like you said before, Andrew, the wider organisations as well. So,
and I think we've just been fortunate that our expertise alongside Alison and Dynamics team's expertise, which sometimes, you know, we've relied on their expertise as well, because they've got, you know, a lot of expertise. You know, it's married up really well and enabled us to kind of just come up with something that we feel is quite unique.
Excellent. Okay.
I think it's worth mentioning as well that I suppose we have produced an awful lot of e-learning materials around infection prevention control for example, other NHS trusts, but this is definitely unique. It is a very different type of programme because it goes a lot deeper.
So I've got one final question for you, but I'm not really sure who to aim this at, so feel free to jump in. This is obviously a really, really excellent programme. It's a really high profile programme. It meets a lot of needs. I know the rollout started. But if I'm an NHS trust or I work in healthcare or the care industry or sector, how do I get access to it? How do I get to experience the pathways that you've created and Dynamic have created with your content?
So wherever you work in healthcare, whether you work in an acute setting or health and social care or as a paramedic or maybe in a nursing home, it's likely that you'll have an education lead. If you don't have an education lead, you'll have a regional infection control lead who you can contact, or there is an email address at MFT that you can contact with more information about the course.
Okay, it's readily available now?
It is, yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
And from a Dynamic point of view, Alison?
Yeah, please get in touch with Dynamic and we'd be more than happy to give you a presentation, a demo of the programme.
I think demos and presentations are so much more powerful though, aren't they, than sending a link in an email and letting people work their way through it, because it'll showcase how you developed something, why you developed it that way, and it'll also give people a chance to immerse themselves in it under a managed sort of environment really, which is much better, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to hear from people.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being guests on the podcast. You've been absolutely fantastic. I can absolutely guarantee that your passion, your commitment to this programme and these pathways has come through, and I think everybody who's watching or listening to this will see that. So, been brilliant guests. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.